What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Powerhouse Mentality podcast. I'm your host. I'm Caitlin Kenneth Smith, and today's topic is going to be on tips for training in the heat. So today I'm recording this. It is Memorial Day, so it's Monday, May 27th, 2024, and it is also one of the hottest days of the year that it's been so far here in Florida. It's not that hot. It's 89 degrees. Yesterday it was about 92, and tomorrow it's going to be a whopping 94. Now, for those of you who follow me on social media, which I'm assuming that you do if you listen to the podcast, but if you don't, you should go ahead and follow me at Caitlin Kenna Fitness. But if you follow me on social media, then you're aware that every single day I train in my garage. So I'm training to be a competitive CrossFit athlete with the goal of going to the games within the next 2 to 4 years. Meaning, I need to be training at a very high level consistently. Now, in order to maximize my training and maximize my time, as I'm also running a business, creating a podcast, coaching clients, and being a wife, I do other things too, and trying not to lose my sanity, all in one. We have built up over the years a really great garage gym, so we really have everything that we could possibly need. There are just a couple more pieces and things that we want to kind of start accumulating, like heavier dumbbells and just more like little nuanced things. But for the most part, we have everything that you could ever need in a CrossFit gym. We have a good variety of dumbbells. We have a rack. We have plates. We have bars. We have the assault bike, the echo bike, the bike erg. We have the ski erg. We have a GHD, a rower, sandbags, and flooring so that it doesn't feel like we're in a garage. But the problem with training in a garage in Florida is that it gets really fucking hot all around during the year, but mostly around this time of year. So like end of May into the end of September, really, it is fucking brutal to train in there some days. But, over the years, my body becomes more acclimated to it. I'm no newbie to the heat. So I grew up in New York, where obviously in New York City, it's not that hot. Like you'll have times during the year in the summer where it gets pretty hot, but unless there's a heat wave, you're not dealing with like 90 to 100 plus degree weather like you are here in Florida. However, I haven't lived in New York in like 6-7 years. So I moved down to North Carolina. And if you live in North Carolina, if you've ever been to North Carolina, especially in the summer months, it gets really brutal, not just with the heat, but also with the humidity, which is another factor that plays into training. And then we moved down to Florida 2 years ago, and I thought that I was going to be fine with this heat because, I've trained in the garage in North Carolina since 2020. I have 2 years of experience under my belt training in the heat. I can handle this. And I remember the first workout that I ever did in Florida. There were 2 instances where I was like, holy crap, I don't know if I can actually do this. The first workout I ever did was the first day that we arrived. Now, I was pretty sleep deprived. We had traveled the day before in a car for 18 hours, so everything was a little bit tight. But I felt pretty good going into the workout. However, as soon as I started the workout, I started realizing very quickly how I was going to have to adjust what I typically do in order to perform at a high level and, most importantly, recover and stay safe during my training sessions. Because I'm not just in this to check boxes off, and I'm assuming that you're not either. You don't want to just check a box off and say, okay, I gave my best. You want to maximize performance and give your best effort regardless of what environment you're placed in. Now, one thing that I really do like at this point in time, after being in Florida for 2 years and training in the heat as long as I have, is that it actually does make me a better athlete because when I'm thrown in other environments that are maybe not as brutal, I can perform at a much higher level because I'm used to performing in more severe circumstances. So it's kind of like in anything in life, you build resiliency when you're put through tough obstacles. So if you've been through a lot during your life and you haven't been handed anything, you're probably going to be more resilient and capable of building an incredible life and handling adversity when it's thrown at you because you have that experience versus somebody who was handed everything to them in life, has never really been through any adversity, they aren't going to be able to be as resilient as you. So you shouldn't want an easy life. You should be thankful for a rough life. Okay? But I also remember the first time that I ran in Florida, it was like 10 a.m. So I was like, it's still the morning. We should be fine. And I remember being like 2 miles into, I think I wanted to do either 3 or 4 miles. And I was like 2 miles in and I thought my skin was melting off. That is how hot it felt. And I remember in that moment, like my heart rate was jacked up because the heat also makes it more difficult to breathe, causing your heart rate to become more elevated than it typically would in cooler environments. So that's another factor that comes into play here. So if you're doing CrossFit or if you're going on a run and you know that your heart rate's going to get up, you also have to understand that like your heart rate's going to get even more elevated because of the heat. So acclimating to that, your body will, I promise you that. I don't know why I spoke like Yoda right there, but it is what it is. We just flow here. Your body will acclimate, but you have to give it an opportunity to acclimate, and you can do certain things that are going to keep you safe and are going to help you perform at a high level despite the heat. So here's some things that I've learned through my experience with training in the North Carolina heat, in the Florida heat, since 2020, doing garage workouts, outdoor runs, all the things that you can imagine. Here are my top 5 tips that I think that are going to be most helpful for you guys to understand. Number 1, and this is one that maybe you can't necessarily control because I can't, but I know that some people can. Number 1 is timing. So I'm not one who actually adheres or listens to this. In fact, when I tell people the time of day that I train in Florida, they are fucking confused as to why I don't train at an earlier or a later time. I literally train smack dab in the middle of the day. When it's probably the hottest outside, that is when I am training. Why? Because it's what works best for my schedule and allows me to feel my best during my workouts. That's just the time of day that I feel my best. I have a lot of carbs in me, I feel good, and then I can knock it out before the evening. So I typically train at around 2:30 is when I start, and I finish around 5:30. Not ideal, but again, it's what works for me and my lifestyle. Now, if you're somebody who's like, okay, I have a little bit more flexibility, or I can't really work out in the middle of the day. Not a lot of people can, I understand that. Maybe I'm not relatable in that sense, but I'm building an unrelatable life because I want to do unbelievable things. Now, you would like to ideally do your workouts early morning or late evening when the sun isn't as high in the sky, we'll say. So for me, again, this is what works for me. This is what fits my lifestyle, and I'm not going to sacrifice sleep for 10 degrees because the reality is in Florida, it's like 80 degrees at 6 a.m. and I'm not going to fucking mess around with my sleep just for that. Is the sun less brutal? Of course. But if you do have an opportunity to mess around with your timing here, ideally, if you're training in the heat, especially during those summer months, you want to be training early morning, late evening in order to really not hit midday heat and have to deal with that. Now, if you're like me and you're going to deal with it, then you're going to deal with it. And here are some more tips that you can use. So, number 2, and this is, again, this one out of all of them is probably the most important and also probably the most, not overlooked, but the most, obvious. Hydration. But not just hydration. Because, okay, yeah, hydration is duh. Of course, I should be hydrating and drinking water if I'm training at all. But of course, if I'm training in the heat where I'm losing a lot of fluids and a lot of sweat and it's hot and I want to cool my body down. But a lot of people overlook the salt. Now, let's talk about salt because there's a lot of people out there where there's a lot of stupid fucking controversy about salt. Salt is not the problem. There are plenty of research studies that actually show that higher levels of sodium are better for overall health. Now, there's a caveat to this because somebody's going to be like, well, what about my blood pressure? Here's where studies find that salt is negative for your health. when it is not causation, but it is correlation. So when people have high sodium diets, those people typically aren't the people who are eating in a calorie-controlled environment. Those are probably not the people who are eating real, whole, natural foods, because real, whole, natural foods don't contain sodium. What contains sodium and high amounts of sodium, ridiculously high amounts of sodium, to enhance flavor and to get you coming back for more, is highly processed food. Highly processed, hyper-palatable, tasty food. Things that come in boxes. And of course, fast food. So if you're eating a lot of highly processed food and a lot of fast food, typically you're over-consuming calories. And when you're over-consuming calories, that's where the problem lies. You're over-consuming calories. It's causing inflammation in the body. It's causing your blood pressure to rise. It's causing you to pack on more and more body fat, which is negative for your health. You're probably not building muscle in the process. So it's not sodium, it's the food, but where it's coming from. It's overconsumption of calories. So sodium plays a crucial role in your body, and its benefits are significant, especially when it comes to health and fitness. Now, here are just a few things that sodium helps with. Cellular function and energy. So sodium is essential for basic cellular function and helps to maintain fluid balance within the cells. It also helps with energy levels and is linked to improved performance during workouts by aiding in the retention of water, which is going to help with cellular function and help your muscles to contract. Without the presence of sodium, without the presence of water, your muscles can't contract. And that kind of goes into the second thing, which is performance enhancement. So specifically for athletes or for anybody who's training or for anybody who's on a low-carb diet, which is probably some people who are listening to this, so ears up, sodium can dramatically enhance your performance. It works like a performance-enhancing substance by maintaining that fluid balance, like we spoke about earlier, improving muscle strength because your muscle contractions can be more powerful, and improving your overall physical performance. It's also going to help with improved recovery. And for my bodybuilding people out there who are chasing the pump, sodium helps with better pumps. If you want to have a sick pump during your workout, scrap the pre-workout, to have salt, carbs, and water, you will look unbelievable. So sodium helps to increase intermuscular fluid. So it helps to increase the water retention in your muscles, leading to better muscle pumps and enhanced recovery post-workout, because a hydrated cell is a happy cell. A hydrated cell is one that will grow, repair, and recover at a good rate to help with your results. Now, blood pressure and heart health. This is a big one. And this is the most common misconception, that sodium primarily causes harm by increasing blood pressure. However, appropriate sodium consumption is vital for vascular function and maintaining a healthy blood pressure, especially when one consumes a lot of healthy foods that are low in sodium. So if you're consuming a lot of whole natural foods, you're not consuming a lot of sodium. So you need to make sure you're heavily salting your foods and even adding in electrolytes. I use the First Form hydration sticks. I also have used Elementy in the past. So either one of those is really going to help you if you're somebody who doesn't eat a lot of processed foods. And the fifth one, and the one that we should probably focus on the most, is brain function. So sodium intake is also linked to better cognitive function and may support brain health as we age, which is always important, because I know I'm one of those people, and I'm sure you are too, where you can barely remember what you did yesterday. So sodium can help with that. Now, maintaining a balanced sodium intake is essential for neuron function and may help prevent cognitive decline. So think of sodium as an essential part of nervous system function and muscular function. Think about all of the things in your body that the nervous system does and the muscular system does. Literally fucking everything. So if you're somebody, especially who is eating a lot of whole natural foods, not a lot of processed foods. You're drinking probably upwards towards a gallon of water. You're training in the heat, or just training in general, but especially if you're training in the heat and you're sweating a lot. You need to heavily salt your food. Again, especially if you eat whole foods. If you're eating a lot of processed foods, you're probably getting enough sodium. Now, a lot of people overlook the salt thing because they'll start to feel wonky during a workout, and I used to be this person. Even when I just started off training people, I used to be this person, where you feel a little bit off during a workout, kind of feel a little bit like completely out of it, you're shaky, things just aren't working, you feel not good, even maybe a little nauseous, and initially our brain goes to, oh, my blood sugar is low, I need carbs. That could be it. But what happens more often than not is that it's actually sodium, and your sodium is too low. So you keep drinking water and water and water, and you're actually making it worse because water is just going to continue to flush out the electrolytes and disturb the balance. So the best thing to do in that situation, I know it's going to sound weird, is to literally take a little dime-sized palm of salt and just straight to the dome, wash it down with some water, and you'll probably feel immediately better. Or if you invest in electrolytes like the First Form hydration sticks, I will link those down below. I take one every single day, especially if I'm training in the heat. I'm probably going to start taking 2 a day now that it's getting hotter and I'm sweating a lot more. Again, I'll link those down below. My favorite is the citrus, but the mango is a close second. I like tasty things. So salt is important, and of course, hydration. So making sure that you're drinking 100 ounces of water minimum a day. I always push for at least 128 ounces, which is a gallon. It's just a nice rule of thumb. Drink a gallon of water. Make sure you're including electrolytes if you're drinking that much water. Make sure you're heavily salting your food to maintain fluid balance, because you can become very sick and land yourself in the hospital if you have low sodium. My mom was somebody who was put on blood pressure medication and a water pill at the same time. Both of these things completely flushed all of the electrolytes out of her body, on top of her doctor telling her not to use salt on anything. And she felt horrible. She thought she was dying. She was calling me, freaking out. And I told her, it sounds like you have low sodium levels. Go to the hospital, get blood work done. She did. And they had to pump her full of sodium because she had dangerously low levels. So she was in the hospital for 2 days, hooked up to an IV, getting pumped full of electrolytes in the hallway of a hospital room. Or hallway of a hospital, because the good old hospital didn't have any rooms readily available for her because she didn't have insurance. So don't land yourself in a situation like that. Instead, get ahead of the game. Be proactive here instead of reactive. Hydrate and salt. The third thing, this is kind of just more of a random thing that I tucked in here, is you want to make sure you're cooling down properly. And you can do this by having different accessories, is how I like to word it. So think about things like this. Towels, I wet them and I put them in the freezer so they're ice cold. And then after a hard Metcon, I will take one out of the freezer and put it on my wrists. All right, I put it on my wrists because that's the most efficient way to cool down without causing your body to go into shock. If you throw it on your neck, sometimes it can mess up your temperature a little bit too much. So towels in the freezer to cool down. Fan is a great investment. You can get big fans. We got one from Lowe's. And while when you're not standing in front of it, it doesn't help that much, but it does help a little bit. So it's what can we do to make things even 1% better? Because a lot of the time it's just blowing around hot air. But when you're in such a hot environment, especially after finishing an intense workout, sitting in front of the fan is glorious, especially if you have one of those cold towels. Another thing, chalk. If you're doing any sort of Olympic lifting, if you're using dumbbells, just chalk. Chalk when it's hot, because you will sweat, and if you sweat as much as me, then your cleans and your snatches and your Olympic lifts are going to get really sketchy and could get dangerous. So last week we ran out of chalk, and there were moments where I actually had to lower the weight when I was doing more of my main lifts because it just didn't feel like I was secure. So chalk is awesome. We went this weekend and bought a ton of chalk to make sure that I was loaded up. Now, if you're in a regular gym, you might have to invest in some liquid chalk. Now, if you're in a regular gym, you're probably not dealing with this issue, though, because you probably have AC. So, next is that if you are training in the sun, and this goes around with cooling down properly in your accessories, make sure you're wearing light clothing, light in color, but also light in fabric. And also make sure that you invest in things like sunglasses or a hat. They make a difference. I know that they don't sound like they make a difference, but they totally make a difference. Now, the fourth thing is micronutrient intake. And you're like, wait a second, micronutrients, isn't that what's in fruits and veggies? Why the fuck does that have anything to do with training in the heat? Okay, this one's overlooked. When you sweat, you're losing more than just water, right? And we talked about this a little bit with the salt. You're losing salt, you're losing electrolytes, you're losing salt, you're losing minerals, you're losing vitamins. So make sure that you are replenishing the minerals and the vitamins that you're losing in your sweat through micronutrient intake. So for me, that looks like eating a wide variety of fruits and vegetables every single day. So I eat more than 800 grams of fruits and vegetables every single day. 800 grams is like the minimum for me. However, if you're just starting off on this journey and you're like, holy shit, that's a lot of fruits and veggies, start small, 100 grams at each meal, and then you can slowly build upon that. It's also going to help improve your fiber intake. You're going to be more satiated. It's going to help you in so many other ways. But if you're somebody who doesn't eat that many fruits and vegetables, or you're not eating them in a wide variety, take a micronutrient packet. This is something that I do anyway, because again, it's like that extra insurance agent, and I'm going to do everything that I possibly can to make sure that I'm feeling and performing my best, not just physically, but also mentally. Because if you're deficient in at least one micronutrient, which 2 billion people in the world are, you're going to see physical and psychological detriments to that. So the micronutrient packet that I use is Microfactor by First Form. I love it because it comes in a little packet. It's easy to like take wherever the fuck you go. I take it to First Watch all the time, or whenever we go out to eat. Just make sure whenever you take a micronutrient pack, you're taking it with a meal so that it helps to absorb those fat soluble vitamins. That's a hard word. Everything that I'm talking about when it comes to supplements, because there will be a lot of supplements in this episode since it is about training in the heat and replenishing what you've lost, they will all be linked down below in the show notes, so make sure you look for that. The fifth one is supplementation. Now, this is a big place where supplements can be advantageous. I'm a huge believer that supplements can be very beneficial to fill gaps. However, supplements aren't the end-all be-all, and I find that so many people want to look at the glamorous supplements before they really get the foundations like training, nutrition, and sleep down. So get those things down. But when you're training in the heat, supplements can be a very, very, very beneficial tool. So things that I take, the electrolytes. So I take the First Form hydration sticks. I spoke about them earlier. They have sodium, potassium, and magnesium to help you replenish what you lost when you sweat and maintain proper fluid balance. Number 2 is a post-workout supplement. So you should be taking this regardless of whether you're training in the heat or not. If you're doing any sort of resistance training, any sort of high-intensity training, you should be taking post-workout. Fast digesting carb, fast digesting protein, because you want to get your body out of a broken down state as fast as possible to kickstart the recovery process. Will you die and not see any results if you don't take this? No. Is it helpful? I found that it is. That's why I've been taking it for 5 years. I personally do the First Form post-workout stack. One, because First Form is a company that I truly believe in. Their products have been the best that I've found. Are there great supplements outside of First Form? Absolutely. But it's not just about the supplements. It's also about the core values and the people. 2, it's the best fucking protein I've ever tasted in my life, and I will die on a hill with that one. Also, the carb powder, the Ignition, has a multivitamin in it. So all that shit that you're losing when you sweat, not just are you getting carbs to help replenish your energy that you lost, but you're also getting the multivitamin. Also, third thing, intra-workout carbs and salt. If I'm training for more than 90 minutes, and if you're training for more than 90 minutes, or honestly, in the heat, closer to 60 minutes, carbs and electrolytes should be part of your training session. So I take Ultraformance, again, by First Form. It has electrolytes, quick emptying carbs so that it doesn't sit in your stomach while you train. Feels good, tastes good. And then the final thing is that micronutrient pack, so making sure you're replenishing the micronutrients that you've lost in your sweat, but also filling gaps if you're not eating a wide variety of fruits and vegetables every day, which I'm pretty sure every fucking American can fall into that gap, and every American would probably benefit from taking a micronutrient pack. Let's be honest. But Guys, I hope that this episode was helpful for you. If you are somebody who is training the heat, you have to take this seriously because it can be dangerous if you aren't preparing ahead of time. Now, if you have any questions when it comes to training the heat, or you have a specific scenario that you'd like me to help you with, go ahead, email me, DM me on Instagram, whatever works best for you. But other than that, go out and do one thing today that's going to take you one step closer to where you want to be.